Hi guys, welcome to Love and Lust audiobooks channel, updated daily with great audiobooks, so please subscribe to me if you don't want to miss it. Well, let's go to read this book. Human, You're Delicious, chapter 11 to 15. Chapter 11, morning meeting. Vicky. I stepped out of the cab onto the busy sidewalks of Newton City just in front of the Kingsland Hotel and took a long, deep breath. I had no idea why Leon couldn't just accept my resignation, but then again, I had no idea why I came. What was I hoping for? Didn't he want our bond, and even if I did? Leon was not the type I could get close to. However, my body didn't seem to care, and before I could register it, I was already standing in front of his office door, knocking. I could already smell his blood perfume through my nose plugs. Thank God I took a tranquilizer already. Come in. My body tensed at his voice. Fucked. I was utterly fucked. I opened the office door and was greeted instantly by Leon's smell. I tried to ignore it, but it was so blissful, like I just wanted to breathe it in all day. His eyes lifted from the paper he was reading as I entered. I swore I saw a small flicker of light in them. Vicky, please sit. He gestured to the chair across from him, and I followed his instruction. The power he had over me was indescribable. I needed to move this along. I don't know how much longer I could hold out. Sir, why are you quitting? His abruptness caught me off guard. He cared. Leon chuckled, which surprised me even more. It seemed whole and genuine, and his smile was absolutely breathtaking. I care. Vicky, just because I keep my head down doesn't mean I don't have a heart under it all. So tell me what happened. You only just started. Did he just... How I shook my head. I must be losing it. I'll be honest, sir. That's all, I asked, he interjected, leaning back in his chair. Fuck. As much as I love the opportunity you and the staff here have given me, I realize that I need to make do with my life. And again, being honest, relationship drama is the last thing I need to be in the center of. Leon hummed, so it was about yesterday. I figured. When I nodded, he continued. I called you here today to not only talk about your resignation, but also to apologize for awesome behavior yesterday. Apologize, what was happening? His eyes narrowed in on me as he interlocked his fingers together. I am letting you know that if you stayed, that incident would be the last. For some reason, I highly doubted that. So I appreciate that. Please, he interjected, call me Leon. Leon. Hua. I started his name feeling weird in my mouth. I had never been so informal with a boss before. But then again, my boss had never been my blood bond. What is that, he asked. I cocked my head to the side. What is what? A blood bond. What the actual fuck? There was no way he didn't know anything about it, unless he could read my mind. He said, capturing my attention. What I asked, even though I knew the answer. Leon took a sip of the water on his desk and flippantly shook his hand in the air. Read your mind. I paused and then laughed, but when Leon didn't, he followed suit. It slowly died out. You can tell be serious. I've heard of kindred and other supernatural creatures being able to read minds, but humans, that's not normal at all. It's not normal, Yuri. Right. My eyes widened and then grew even more the longer I thought about all of the things I had been thinking around him, like how strong his smell was. You know how I wanted more than anything to be near him despite my reservation. Is a Psi blood bond? Wait, also, one of the reasons you wanted to leave. I didn't know how to answer, so I nodded. So, are you going to tell me what it is? I shook my head. Yeah. All right. Well, what about this new position Asip offered you as a personal chef? Are you going to take it? I want to, sir. I don't think I can. Leon looked at me. His gray eyes were piercing mine, and I swore I could almost see my reflection in them. Why not? I inhaled. The scent was getting stronger. I don't want to be indebted to her. Cried. I don't know if I can be around someone like that, sir. All right. Leon began that. Oh, fair enough. I know what it sounded like, feeling trapped by your decisions. Was he alluding to his relationship right now? In that case, I am prepared to offer you a counter deal. A counter deal. Leon nodded. I want you to go to this party. Cool, but as the chef for Kingsland Hotel, you'd be representing the company, and wouldn't he be in debt to anyone? And I'll pay you double then. When you're ready, you welcome to continue your position here. I didn't he understand. The Leon Knightley that I had heard of was stern, quiet, and incapable of feeling. Besides when it came to his food. But the one in front of me now was offering to hold my position for me despite my sudden resignation. Had I really impressed him that much? Leon smirked again. His body was the most relaxed I had seen in my time knowing him. I wanted to give in fuck. I wanted to. The smell was beyond intoxicating. It was downright orgasmic. I could feel it tickling the inside of my nostril in spite of my nose plug. I'll come back. I began before I even knew what I was saying. God, the blood perfume was really working. It's magic. I felt like I was high, but I have one condition. And what's that? Leon asked, his voice much softer than I had ever heard. I put my fists into my lap and balled them together. It was taking everything in me to hold myself back. I don't really want to be a part of any drama. I just want to come here, do my job, and enjoy my remaining life. I reached up and covered my mouth before I finished speaking shit. Leon's muscles turned rigid, but his gaze remained on me. This time, however, it was only full of empathy. What did you say? He asked. What happened to you? I shook my head. Nothing. Leon raised an eyebrow, but didn't he press it any further? If anything, I respected him for it and internally thanked him, knowing full well he had heard me. I lost my mother, he continued, when I was 20. I felt my heart contract. I was a mix of surprise and pain for someone else. Flaw. I knew what it was like to lose someone. My parents had been gone so long that I had almost forgotten what they best look like. I'm sorry, sir, I whispered. I had no idea what else to say. It sounds all right, he nodded. I have come to terms with it. I was more so sharing because she told me something when she was sick that kind of stuck with me. She said, make the most of whatever you have, small or large for you. I think that means doing whatever makes you happy. I paused. He was being so open. Ooh, and the scent, his perfume, was entirely a part of me at this point. I couldn't escape it, and I didn't want to anymore. I think staying would make me happy. Leon smiled gently. His tone was velvet, like we were both high on the same drug. It would make me happy too. And I know Frank is just itching for your help. At this I laughed, imagining Frank meeting anyone was just as hysterical as this conversation. Leon's grin grew as he watched joy take me over. He stood and walked from around his desk, sitting on the chair beside me. One of his hands outstretched and touched my shoulder. You read a good cook, Vicky Dawn to it, and you want to take that away from you. Oh God, he was so close. I could smell every inch of sweat on his body, pouring the blood perfume. My hands began shaking in my lap, and the hair on my neck raised. Thank you, sir. I basically whispered. His hand was on me, and I could almost see myself reflected in his gaze. What did I say about calling me anything but my name? He basically purred. Velvet, pure velvet. I corrected myself. Leon, it was so liberating. I felt so alive, and that seemed to what also scared me the most. The air in the room suddenly stilled as we stared at each other. Leon's eyes scanned my features as if they were searching for the answer to what was about to happen. I braced myself. I wanted him. There was no denying it anymore. Gradually, he moved in. Our faces got closer and closer until finally, our lips touched. Chapter 12. Vicky. Love couldn't be reasoned with. It was not subjected to individual will, external forces, or God. Nothing mattered when it came to love. What you needed was to enjoy the moment. I enjoyed being in the same room as Leon. His scent was more like hypnotic incense to me at this moment, and his kiss was intoxicating. I leaned into it with a small groan escaping from my lips. Nothing in my life had felt more right than this, and I was confident he felt that too. I wrapped my arms around him and teased the hair on the nape of his neck. All of it felt natural. The way he pulled himself closer, how his hand found the side of my face and fit it so perfectly. The way his lips collided with mine. Time seemed to have paused. My heart was no longer as restless as before. I was entirely hit. Only, this couldn't truly last, not unless I was honest with him about the different lives I've been through and what had happened on Earth for the past days, years. But I knew I couldn't tell him in this life. My name was Vicky, and I was only capital. My life had barely begun when it was about to come to an end. I moved my hands along the side of his face when he pulled away. Both of us were entirely breathless. I'm sorry, he said, as he wiped his now red lips with his index finger. I don't know what came over me. I would never. He didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he watched me as if he were waiting for my reaction. I couldn't speak. The blood perfume had taken over my state of mind, and I was in an entire haze. So before I could talk myself out of it, I gave myself another second to enjoy the moment. This time, I initiated and reached around the back of his head, pulling him back in. My kiss was gentle and responsive, which seemed only to strengthen his confidence. Seconds later, he was devouring me as if I were the latest dish on his menu. His lips hungrily gnawed at mine, asking for immediate permission, and I didn't hold back. My lips parted and his tongue made its way in, exploring every inch of my mouth. Fuck, if this is what a blood bond felt like, I'd go for one any day. I groaned against his mouth, prompting an instant grin. It was like we couldn't get enough of one another. Despite meeting only 2 days ago, the blood perfume and bond between us had entirely taken over, and our instincts responded. I could feel the budding love in my heart, but I'd been hurt before. I didn't want to deal with it again. However, no matter how hard I tried to fight it, there was only one way to solve this problem, and that was to drink a drop of our Lord Ancestor's blood. Believe it or not, no one who had tried had ever successfully found his coffin. But if by some sheer luck or will you spend the rest of eternity. In short, I would never have a mate again, and I would never be able to feel emotion again. Then a knock erupted on the door. We both quickly pulled back, and I could instantly feel the longing replace my elation. Leon stood and wiped at his mouth again, to which I did the same. After a moment, he called out, "Come in." Leon and I jumped a good distance apart as Mason entered and stood in the doorway with his hands behind his back. "Sir, Mr. Loyal is here to see you." Leon looked at his watch and then back to Mason. "It's smatch, deet, almost lunch rush. Can he come back?" "No, sir," Mason answered, shaking his head. "I am afraid," Mr. Loyal said, "he has another meeting at noon, and this is an urgent matter." Leon sighed, "All right, sentiment." Mason nodded and stepped out of the office. I looked at Leon, who had shifted his stance and expression. "I can go." "Ah!" I said, unsure. I moved toward the door when Leon's hand reached out and grabbed mine, stopping me. "Stay," he stated quietly. I turned to look at him, perplexed, but didn't have time to respond before Mr. Loyal walked in. He was decked head to toe in a navy blue suit, with matching tie against his white dress shirt. His black hair was in loose, natural curls with streaks of gray lining them, and his beard was immaculately trimmed. This man oozed confidence and civility with a mixture of complete wealth. "Leon, great to see you again," Mr. Loyal Leon said, stepping behind his desk and gesturing at the chairs. "We were literally just making out in seconds before. Please have a seat." "Thank you, my boy." Mr. Loyal unbuttoned his suit jacket and sat down. I stood awkwardly in the same position, unsure whether to listen to Leon's request or take my lead. But when his eyes flipped to me and I got a whiff of his blood perfume, my body instantly relaxed. "Mr. Loyal," he began, "this is Vicky, my newest hire and one of my best chefs." Best chefs. I knew I was good, but I was only hired a few days ago. I clasped my hands together in front of me and gave Mr. Loyal, who had spun around to look at me, a smile. "Is that so? Well, if Leon thinks highly of you, then I am sure you are just as talented as he said." I couldn't help but beam. This was slowly turning into one of my best days yet. "Thank you, sir," I said once I finally found the courage to speak. "I am honored." "Please," he grinned. God, his teeth were perfect. "The pleasure is all mine." Mr. Loyal then spun back around and faced Leon, who had now taken a seat behind his desk. So Mr. Loyal Leon started. I was so amazed at his ability to switch back into professional mode so quickly as if nothing had happened. "What can I help you with today?" "Well, I was hoping to continue our dinner conversation from last night. As you know, I am expanding cheese local into the western parts of the country, and we discussed the prospect of you joining my establishment." "Yes, sir, I was and still am very honored, but as I stated at dinner, I can't leave Kingsland Hotel. This is my business, my home." "Oh, of course," Mr. Local continued. "I would never expect you to abandon this position. Believe it or not, I admire you for your dedication to your restaurant." He sat up straighter in his seat, like he was about to make the offer of a lifetime. "After we talked last night and you shared your opinion on the matter, it got me thinking, I need someone competent by my side through this transformation, and Asip was telling me of your management capability. So I was wondering, would you like to sign on as co-owner of Ches Local? Then you can remain here and continue to run Kingsland Hotel while also managing affairs for Ches Local from afar." Oh, he was making the offer of a lifetime. Leon's eyes grew 3 times the size. "Sir Juan," he finally stated after a few moments of shock. I don't know what to say. "How about yes, Mr. Local Cokes?" I'd love to." Leon grinned. It was a true blue smile that radiated the eagerness and bliss of a young boy. I could almost see the kid he used to be watching his own dreams come true. Then another scent penetrated my senses. It wasn't the blood perfume. It was something much stronger and sinister. It was the smell of a blood hunter. Blood hunters were a part of the predators group, whether it was day or night. Until they succeeded, they would search for their prey. Anyone in their path was instantly in immortal danger. However, what I couldn't figure out was why I was smelling it. It was the late morning, early afternoon, and the probability of one hunting during the day was relatively low. I didn't know if either Leon or Mr. Loyal were kindred or part of the blood hunters. The worst thing about the predators were that they were like cockroaches. When you found one, it was easy to guess that a few dozen more were around. Leon and Mr. Loyal continued to chat while my mind wandered. Leon must have heard my thoughts as his gaze kept flicking back toward me with growing concern, but I couldn't shut it off. The smell was potent and they were close. Suddenly, Mr. Loyal stood from his seat and buttoned up his jacket. Leon, as always, it's been a pleasure, but I do have to leave for an upcoming meeting. Here's my card. Please call once you've sorted out the details with Mr. Spencer, and we can go from there. Welcome to the team, my boy. Leon outstretched his hand and shook Mr. Loyal's hand. Thank you, sir. Seconds later, the door opened, and Mason appeared ushering Mr. Loyal, who shot a cordial smile my way out of the office. Once the door closed, Leon walked around the desk to meet me. "Everything all right?" I shook my head. I didn't need to look at myself to know how distraught I was. The scent had faded ever so slightly, but it still lingered, and my abilities were that much more heightened. I could feel the feral being side of me itching to get out and find its source. I am sorry," I said, my own voice unrecognizable. "I need to go." "Vicky, wait." But it was too late. I had already left. I bolted out the front entrance of the Kingsland Hotel and followed the scent down the street. Normally, I would not care. The predator says business was really no concern of mine. Except now it was different. I had experienced the blood bond, and according to kindred stories, once you experience the bond, your instincts would do anything to protect your mate. As I worked my way through the crowd searching for suspicious targets, I suddenly spotted a guy in a denim jacket and a baseball cap. He was emitting a specific aura that I just couldn't quite put my finger on. This was one of them. I knew it. I wasn't sure of what I was going to do when I approached him. According to kindred law, blood hunters couldn't take a person's life at will unless that person threatened their interest. It was a rule to protect kindred, but also humans, one that the predators and blood hunters were trying to abolish. I followed him through the crowd and down a less busy street. He hadn't noticed me, and I was hoping to keep it that way. The closer I got to him, I could see that he wasn't anyone I recognized, meaning he wasn't a kindred from my community. But there was still a part in my brain that was itching with the fact that I had seen him somewhere once before. Once again, he turned the corner and went down an alley. I ducked behind a nearby garbage bin when he began to look around for safety. When he found a spot with no one around, he jumped and with complete grace flew up to the roof of one of building. I watched from below as he took a spray-like object from his pocket and shook it. I knew exactly what he was doing. It was a primitive way of marking things. Only, what was he marking and why? He then put it back and in its place pulled a phone out, placing it to his ear. "It's done. The target has been marked at all known locations. Viveka, Leon." Wait, what? I knew my senses weren't going off for any random reason. This was why they knew. Even before I did. He hung up the phone and put it away. I wanted to jump up there and tackle him, but I couldn't. I wouldn't tie on a blood hunter myself. The man paused and waited, then tilted his head up to the sky, smelling shit. "You can come out," he called. "No use in hiding. I could smell you the entire time." Word of advice, if you plan on following a hunter next time, mask your scent. Well, fuck. Chapter 13, Reservation. Vicky. I slowly moved forward from behind the bin and watched as a slow smile appeared on his face. Once I stopped, he walked off the roof's ledge and softly landed right in front of me. He then removed the hat and in the sunlight revealed his pale face. His cheekbones were very prominent and there wasn't a single strand of hair on his head. His eyes were a deep golden yellow, the sign of a superior kindred. I know, because I had the same colored eyes. From his appearance, I could tell he wasn't much older than I was when I turned. Forever 20, but from his display of confidence, he was well over years old. With blood hunters, this was very common in the era of war and famine. Many people chose to join the predators and become a blood hunter to survive. This was before the kindred law and before it was illegal to turn a human against their will. It was all about getting to the next day, and what better way to ensure that than to become immortal and more powerful. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to find my voice, "and what were you doing here? If the elder son find out..." Fuck the elders, the man spat out. They do us kindred no favors. Life was simpler and better when the law didn't exist. When we could do what we pleased, I sighed. There was no reasoning with a blood hunter on the ways of the law. What do you want with Leon? I stated, changing the topic. Nothing to your concern, he said, moving around the alley, almost cat-like, just doing my job. It is my concern, I growled. The man paused, and then a smile spread across his face. He says your blood bond isn't he? A short chuckle fell out of him. This is too good. Do you know who he really is? Truthfully, no, I didn't. I had only met him a few days ago, but our connection was undeniable. Plus, there was no way the goddess would pair me with someone sinister. I have a good idea, I retorted with a slight sneer, showcasing my fang. At this, the man's giddiness dropped, and he took a step closer. His fangs glistened in the midday sun. You need to be sure you know who you're dealing with. Vicky, remember, a bond is a lifetime. We don't want the wrong kind getting eternal life. How did he know my name? Whatever, I didn't care. I only cared that Leon remained out of whatever he had planned. Was that a threat? Think of it more as a warning, the man replied. I opened my mouth to respond to tell him to back off, but before I could blink, he was gone. I was seething. My nerves were at an all-time high. I needed to alert the elders. There was no way I could do this alone. So I reached into my pocket and released a bat notification to inform the elder messenger. We needed to catch him, and sooner rather than later. I debated for a while on whether or not to return to the Kingsland. The elders would be on alert now and know to keep an eye on the blood hunters and predator. With their help, I could focus on the upcoming events only now. I knew I needed to turn my focus to Leon, not only to keep him safe, but also to make sure I learned exactly what the blood hunter meant. After deciding against it, I returned to the community and finally home. I opened the door to my bedroom and immediately climbed in, letting sleep take me over. A streak of firelight flashed through the darkness, illuminating the night sky. I rode a white stallion. The black armor and blood-red dress made me stand out in the sea of body. A mass of troops stood in front of me with their backs to me. I was being guarded. Suddenly, a horse galloped up beside me. A man with a longer, crisp-cut beard looked to me. Your Majesty, the Allied Holy Order has arrived. A total of Annie College people. I stared into the distance and saw a silver white line on the horizon coming toward us. The other party was well-equipped and well-trained. Karafha sent a message demanding us to put down our weapons and surrender quickly. They promised to only kill you and let others go. At this, I laughed hysterically. The entire battlefield trembled under my laughter. I picked up the iconic blood-red scythe and pointed it at the sky. I, Victoria, the Blood Moon, swear to the heavens that none of Allied Holy Order shall be able to make it home alive. Today, we will feast on their land here, warriors. We will be their nightmare. Let's enjoy eating the flesh and blood of the enemies. Let the hunt begin. The men and women behind me roared. I couldn't see the expressions of the humans opposite me, but I guessed it must be very exciting. I spurred my horse and rushed out. Behind me, the Blood Knights followed closely, all crying their own battle cry into the night sky. I jolted awake to find the entire house enveloped in darkness. I sat up in my bed and tapped the lamp. I hadn't had this dream in a long time. My whole body ached and I stretched fiercely. I checked my notifications on my phone, but there was nothing from the elders or their messengers on the community boards. My stomach growled. To be honest, I felt awful. I casually took some leftover fruit and meat from the fridge and stir-fried it a few times before putting it onto a plate. I grabbed myself a glass of red wine to complement the taste and situated myself in the chair when my phone rang. Again, Unknown number, classic. I hit the green button, ready to ream out anyone who dared to interrupt my dinner, no matter how late it was. Hello, I said a lot harsher than intended, making my heart stopped, and I instantly regretted my tone. Chef, what have I told you about calling me chef or sir? Anyway, he sounded exhausted, and when I heard Asa Pisa's voice in the background, I immediately knew why. Sorry, I automatically apologized. God, can the scent of the blood perfume really work through phones too? Cly. I was disgusting myself with my compliance. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from the directory at the hotel. Usually I would mind. My privacy was important to me, but when it came to Leon, I found I was pretty much always out of character. No, can I do for you? A Sipla's voice rang through from the other side of the line. It was distant and almost inaudible. I heard Leon reply, and then a grumble come through from her before he returned to our call. What do you have planned for tomorrow afternoon? Tomorrow was Saturday, my first free amount of time to let this all sink in and decide how I would approach things with Leon and my heart. Not even to mention the blood hunters. Nothing that I can think of, I replied. Great, can you be ready for please o'clock? I paused. Do you mind if I ask, what for? Leon shuffled around and I heard a grunt before he finally settled in. Asip wanted me to call. She has a certain look for all of the part staff, and as a chef, she thought I'd be best suited to take you out for new jackets to match the color scheme. I was surprised. Asip was letting Leon be alone with me. Wasn't that the whole reason she wanted me out of Kingsland Hotel? It is, Leon continued. I had to laugh at this. Of course, his abilities worked through phones. Why wouldn't it? Do you want me to send the car to get you at your house, or should we meet elsewhere? Elsewhere, I blurted out. I couldn't risk more humans showing up unannounced in kindred territory. If the elders found out, I'd be in serious trouble. Maybe the cricket shop on Sex Mentas. Sounds like a plan. Even if he could hear what I was thinking, he was doing a good job at hiding it. I expected after his last sentence for him to hang up. There was nothing further to say, but he didn't. And neither did I. Instead, we sat in silence, listening to the sound of one another, breathing. He knew he should hang up. I knew I should. There were so many reasons this wouldn't work out, between him being my boss and my personal complications. It was a recipe for disaster. And yet we both stayed then. I heard a startling woman scream come through the line, and Leon's scent voice trickle through, followed by a softened, damn. Sorry, Vicky, I have to go. I'll meet you tomorrow. Honestly, Santa Clock at the cricket shop. See you then. And with that, the phone line went dead. Chapter 14, A Heart-Sent Confession. The cab slowly turned onto Sexan Street and parked directly in front of the cricket shop. A little gem of a family restaurant in the midst of downtown. I stood outside the storefront, hearing the bustle of coffee-goers and diners in the open patio behind me. I watched each car go by, preparing myself for Leon's house arrival. The last time I had seen him, we'd just finished a spontaneous makeout session. I wasn't too entirely sure how today would go, and being around him and his blood perfume all day. Well, it was a recipe for disaster. Just then, a blue Jeep pulled up to the curb and honked the horn at me. When I looked, the driver let the top fall down, and inside sat a man donning a white button-down. The first top three were left open, exposing a small amount of chest hair, and the hair on his head was neatly combed and styled. He wore sunglasses, and I wouldn't have recognized him if it weren't for that ever. Clear smile. Ready, Leon asked? I slowly nodded and opened the car door to his Jeep. When he said a car was picking me up, I did expect him to be the driver and the car to be so normal. He chuckled as I did up my seatbelt in the passenger seat. The blood perfume hit me quicker than ever. I could sense it anyway. You re-impressed. It wasn't a question, but a statement. A little, I answered as he pulled away and into traffic. It just doesn't really seem like top award, winning chef, Leon Knightley sell vehicle at this. I laughed with him, and the tension and fears I had experienced seconds before slowly vanished. Yeah, I guess so. Now you rewrite, it Sem's more former poor child who saved every dollar he earned to get his dream car as a teenager. Leon Knightley, poor, I questioned. But you, a Knightley, I know, but a mistake Knightley, raised by a woman who cared more about life than wealth. Wow, that's something you would never hear from online search engines or magazines. It was real and raw, and I respected him even more for it. Leon smiled to himself. He heard everything I thought. Can you maybe stop doing that? Stop what? He said, turning his gaze quickly to me and then back to the road again. Oh yeah, sorry. It's also a habit. Is it voluntary? Yes and no. There are some I can read just because they have a mental block of sorts. I've never really figured that one out, but most of the time I do it if I am unsure of a situation or someone. The only time it's ever involuntary is if I am nervous or afraid. I didn't press any further. I didn't want to know which he was right now, unsure or nervous. I found both equally unsettling, and when I looked over to see his expression and gauge on whether he was still listening, I only saw him staring ahead, paying attention to the route that would take us to our destination. When the elevator doors to the top floor of Chef Sec Corner opened, I was astounded. The entire store had been cleared of customers in advance, and it dawned on me at that moment that the power of money was beyond my imagination. The wonderful music and intoxicating incense flooded my senses along with Leon's scent. A glass chandelier hung from the ceiling, and the sound of men's clicking on dark brown marble floors echoed through the empty store. The environment here was next level, and all I could do was stare. Suddenly, I felt a hand touch the base of my back. Go, take a look around, Leon stated. Would you like there, Sam Taylor in the back, so don't worry about fit too much. He waved his hand, gesturing at the items lining the walls and shelves. It felt as if the entire store had become his personal property, and regardless of my aversion to such frivolities, I couldn't help but feel a tiny bit of excitement for a new chef jacket. Leon watched every jacket I changed into and asked the clerk to take notes. His eyes concentrated on me as he sat behind the multiple mirror podium and watched the tailor take measurement. A few times he caught my gaze in the reflection, and I could feel a slight blush rise up. No, I needed to suppress this. This couldn't happen. I was meant to be bondless after the tailor and clerk said their goodbyes and provided Leon with an estimated time of arrival. We grabbed our things and exited the store. I began to walk toward Leon's car when he reached out to stop me. I'm a little thirsty. Mind if we make a pit stop? I know a good cafe here. My head was screaming. This was a bad idea. I had been inhaling his smell all day, and I knew he had been scenting mine. We needed to separate before anything else happened. But instead, I classically replied with, "Sure, where is it?" Leon smiled slightly and gestured for me to follow him. Come with me. The walk to the cafe was relatively short, about 4 city blocks, but with Leon, his blood perfume, and the relenting silence we were facing, it felt like way longer. Although, no matter how out of place I felt and how unsure of my emotions I was, I had to admit today changed my opinion of him. He was not insensitive, mean, or unreasonable, though. He could be really picky deep down. He was soft-hearted, and honestly, someone any kindred would be happy to call their mate. And I just wasn't sure if that kindred was me. We walked into the cafe and took a seat near the window. when the server approached us. Leon ordered himself a coffee and a latte for me. Not long later, the server returned with our items and placed them down in front of us before leaving us alone once more. Neither of us said anything as we took our first sips. This was beyond weird. All I needed to do was get past this, do the event, and then I would never have to see them again. I could move on with life and return to how things used to be, alone and in hibernation. I glanced out the window and watched as the citizens passed by, all consumed in their own worlds. As I took another drink of my latte, "Something bothering you?" Leon's voice grabbed a hold of my attention and I turned my gaze to him, setting my mug down. "Who, me?" Leon eyed me as he slowly brought his mug to his lips. "Yes, there is," he continued as he set it in front of him. "You rarely said anything to me today, and you've been very quiet. You avoiding me." "I'm not avoiding you. I just feel a little tired." "Oh, is that so?" "Positive," I replied. Leon waited a moment, probably seeing if I would say something, but when I didn't, he sighed and took another drink. There it was. His expression changed again, and this time it was replaced by the same cold look I had witnessed the first day I met him. The one telling me he had shut down. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything at all. I looked anywhere but at Leon as I finished my drink. I could see him becoming restless. His fingers lightly drummed on the table. Then out of nowhere, he looked me dead in the eyes and spoke. "When are we going to talk about what happened yesterday?" I coughed on the last gulp of my latte. "Pardon. Yesterday, in my office, I've known you, 2 days, and now I am experiencing all of these emotions that I can explain, that I want to explain." So, I was right. He did feel the same pull. "Leon, I started. I don't think now is the right time to talk about that." His gaze softened. "Now is the only time, Vicky. He was right. Once we left each other today, I'd return to work and be his employee, and he'd return to being the head chef with an ever-interrupting fiancé. But it wasn't the appropriate time to pull him into everything else that came with discussing the connection we felt, the electricity. So for now, it was better to push it off. "It was just a kiss," I whispered, knowing damn well that was a lie. There's really nothing to talk about. At this, his eyes widened slightly and then darkened. "Are you saying I should pretend that nothing happened?" I nodded. "As you said, we're both grown-ups. It doesn't hurt to fool around sometimes, and that's what this was, fooling around." I could feel the pain in my chest increasing with each word, like the strands between our souls were ripping apart thread by thread. I closed my mouth and elongated my fang to nip at the inside of my mouth and keep myself from showing any emotion or thinking of anything else. I watched his eyes for any sign that he was using his abilities, but instead, he just picked up his mug and drank the remainder of his coffee before slapping down a bill and standing. "Finish your drink. I'll bring the car over and drive you home. I need a minute." And with that, he was gone. When I arrived home later that day, I closed the front door behind me and fell against it. Finally, I was free to let my emotions tumble out, and did they ever. I cried, and my body shook. I hadn't felt pain this unbearable since Jacob, and I just couldn't hold it in. This was it. Despite my best efforts, I had fallen, but I couldn't let Leon become a part of this world. If the blood hunters and predators were after him or any other humans, I couldn't risk him becoming involved in this, and it utterly destroyed me. He could never know of the bond or who I truly was. It just wasn't an option. So I would pretend and push him away because having him alive and hating me was better than losing him to something bigger. I don't know if I could do it again. These were the last thoughts I remembered before finally drifting to sleep on the entranceway runner. Vicky quoi, Victoria. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My young face gradually matured. My skin was snow white, and my lips were scarlet red to match my eyes. The enlarged moon was hanging high in the sky. I pushed open the door of a castle room and walked down the hall to a grand staircase. The soldiers under me were enjoying a feast of human flesh. The entire world seemed to be dyed red with blood. I descended the stairs into the king's palace. At the head of the table sat the king, who was holding a long sword and looking at me in despair. Behind him, his wife Thadi lay on the ground. She had already been personally executed by him, and there was no saving her. I rushed to her lifeless frame and knelt beside her. Tears stained my cheeks as I looked at the grimy, blood-covered king. His eyes were as dark as the night sky. Victoria, you fucking monster, do you have any idea how many lives you've claimed? She is dead because of you and your kind. This is your doing? I screamed at him. My queen, please wake up. My hands trembled as they ran over her body, and my eyes landed on her neck, where I had accidentally bitten her. If you didn't bite her, she wouldn't have had to die. I curse you, the king yelled out as the room cheered. You will live in hell forever. Let the flames of the inferno cleanse your soul. I couldn't think straight. All I knew was that my queen was gone, and left in her stead was this monster. My gaze narrowed, entirely full of hate. How can you call yourself just? I sneered. You talk about God and pity every day, but do you really care about if your people live or die? Of course I do. It was you who destroyed the country I was trying to protect. I couldn't listen to him anymore. In one fell swoop, I stood and unsheathed my sword. In response, the king raised his and swiped at me. I easily dodged it, and when I saw my opening, I grabbed his throat and pinned him to the throne. God sees all and might be courteous enough to pardon you, but me, I am not. With a crack, I snapped his neck and decapitated him. Blood gushed out, but it only made me sick. I pushed his body aside and sat numbly on the throne. My pale face was dyed red with blood. I didn't take endless pleasure in my revenge as I thought I would. There was only emptiness, no matter how many people I killed. It couldn't be changed. And this was the moment that the numbness seeped in and took over the remainder of any passion or empathy I'd left. Months flashed by in a haze, and before I knew it, I sat at the same mirror, staring at my fading complexion. Slowly, the door of the main hall was opened again, and my hand, Baden Lazari, entered. He was carrying something. Your Majesty, he began. We found him. He's still breathing. My chest swelled and tears brimmed my eyes. I followed them down the hall to the medical room and walked up to the man laying on one of the beds. I gradually regained my senses when I took a closer look at the broken and beaten body. I realized that it was Jacob. We'll take our leave now, Baden noted. He bowed and then exited, leaving Jacob and I alone. I walked closer and studied my lover. His eyes had been gouged out, and his hands and legs had been broken by the Saint marks. Jacob was dying. It cut at my heart to see him like that. Jacob, I whispered, running a hand through his hair. It's me, you're Victoria. We're home. Don't be afraid. I sobbed as I stroked his scarred cheek. Jacob opened his mouth as if to speak, but all that came out was a whimper. I knew what I needed to do. I bit open my wrist and placed it against his mouth. Before long, I could feel his mouth hungrily sucking at the blood. It felt heavily. Blood-red moonlight shone on us, and almost instantly after pulling my arm back, Jacob's wounds began to heal and his limbs grew back. Realizing what was happening, I rushed to remove the bandages from around his eyes to find two brown ones staring back at me. Jacob smiled, and I could feel the connection strengthening between us. He was my mate, and now I was his. Chapter 15. Past lover, Victoria years ago. As the moonlight shone through the window into my bedroom, I awoke to find myself next to Jacob, shrouded in the warmth of his skin. I never felt more at home for more than a month. The two of us had been glued together, immersed in the erotic pleasures of the harem. I still attended council meetings and make executive decisions. But in my time away, I left all of the government affairs to bathe it. I cared about the throne and my people. It was the reason I usurped it. But once Jacob was found, it was as if everything else didn't matter anymore. The politics, the wars, nothing else mattered but the man lying beside me, entirely healthy and alive. As my mate, his physical fitness had improved tremendously, especially in bed. We could even make love for 1 night and 2 days without stopping. I couldn't fathom anything more perfect. I trailed my fingers up and down his arm, gently waking him. He roused and stretched, his eyes fluttering open from a restful sleep. "Good morning," he said, with a small smile. "How did you sleep?" "Better with you," I mustered, placing a gentle kiss on his lip. Jacob chuckled. "You say that every day." "Because it's true." At this, Jacob rolled his eyes and fell back onto his pillow, letting the softness of my fingers lull him back into a sleep. Like trance. "I am wondering, Gua," I continued softly now that we rebonded. "Gua, how long do you think you will truly love me until you start despising me?" Jacob laughed and rolled over, leaning close to me, "Till the seas go dry and rocks crumble, baby," he whispered. As he spoke, he licked my ear. My heart began to race again. The smell of the blood perfume on his body mixed with his body fragrance, stimulating my every nerve. He moved down from my ear and started to kiss my neck. I groaned against his touch as he removed my clothing for the 3rd time in under 12 hours. Quickly, my snow-white and ample breasts were exposed under his touch. He bent down and sucked crazily at them, the numbing pain invading my brain. I soon found myself moaning. "Whatever you do," I said breathlessly, "Dawn, stop." My voice seemed to hit him hard, and Jacob's attack intensified. He ran his tongue over every inch of my skin until he made his way to my groin. His soft lips and wet tongue teased my G-spot in a frenzy. That was what fascinated me most about him. He always knew exactly where to go. I clamped my long legs viciously around his back and grabbed a hold of the sheet. Each cry I made only drove him crazier, and he started going faster and faster before stopping entirely. The bright moonlight outlined his well-defined face like a sculpture as he looked up at me, and he grinned, licking his lip. "Feeling good, baby." His words were like magnets that attracted every cell in my body. I greedily grabbed the back of his head and pushed him back down, prompting a small laugh from him. I twisted my waist hard and pressed him under me. I was not inferior to him in terms of sex skills, but the more he continued, the closer I got. My moans were growing more intense, and he knew exactly what to do. Jacob stopped and rushed himself up to my lips, continuing to satisfy me with his fingers. I clashed my tongue together with his, pulling him as close as humanly possible, while groaning deeply with each breath. Jacob broke the interaction and turned his neck to me, revealing the glorious skin before me. I bit his neck lightly, and traces of bright red blood flowed into my mouth. The blood of a mate was the most erotic flavor ever to exist, and the combination of blood and sex almost made me fall over the edge. Looking at the man under me, I stroked him with both hands, from top to bottom, wishing I could give him everything I had. He let out a moan of pleasure as I stopped and began stroking him, while he continued maneuvering his fingers in ways I didn't know possible. Our bodies intertwined like snakes, touching each other. I wished a painter would have recorded this magnificent scene. Suddenly, he picked me up and shoved himself into me without warning. It was as if a hot iron had suddenly pierced my skin. I felt pain at first, but then it was replaced by pleasure. "Fuck," I cried out. "Jacob, fuck." My lascivious cries pierced the early morning sky underneath the sunlight. Our entwined bodies were as flawless as oil painting. Jacob's body undulated crazily as we connected. I was immersed in this erotic pleasure. Then he flipped me over, placing my hips high against him. He lined himself up and once again pressed into me, making me scream in utter ecstasy. There was another violent round of pumping until I climaxed, shuddering with the weight of the orgasm knocking me off my knee. My eyes felt closed in complete comfort and happiness. My mind was clear and all I felt was utter cramped pain. I opened my eyes and found Jacob straddling me. I thought at first that he was playing a trick on me or continuing to reach his pleasure, but then a sharp pain shot through me, followed by a mouthful of blood. Sticking out of my chest, right where my heart was a blessed silver dagger. I could still feel the holy power of the dagger restricting the beating of my heart. My eyes were wide in fear and betrayal. Jacob called, my beloved Victoria, he began with a sinister smile, the honored and mighty blood queen. If you thought about more than yourself, for once you would have asked me enough about myself to truly know where I come from. He showed me the silver badge on the handle of the dagger. I recognized it at a glance. It was the badge of the Silver Hunters of the Holy Cross Order. These people were humanoid weapons, specially developed by the church to target kindred. I struggled with all my might to squeeze out of his grasp, but each twist pushed pain through my body. Jacob held down my wrists and put his knees in their place, their bones driving into my flesh and adding more pain. He reached up and tore off his disguise to reveal his original appearance. There was a long, thin scar on his cheek that extended all the way to his neck. His eyes were naturally different. This face was very recognizable. I immediately remembered it. Our Rupert. I cried out with a cough, blood sputtered from my lip. Surprised, huh? Crazy what some witch magic can do. And if I'm being honest, I didn't really see this coming either. I couldn't believe what was happening. Regardless of my wounds, my rage caused more pain. I should have killed you long ago. Jacob let out a wild laugh as he climbed off me and pulled the dagger out of my body. Blood spurted high into the air. It was clear as I lay there bleeding out, I knew exactly why he was there. It was to take revenge on me. I had sucked the blood of his wife dry. Now we seemed to have swapped roles, with him being the hunter and I the game. I had been hunting too much. Maybe this was what I deserved. On the dagger, the blood of my heart gradually solidified like a beautiful ruby. Jacob stared at the stones in fascination. This is it. I finally got it. My eyes widened at bloodstones. As long as my mate consumed these stones, they could naturally remove their soul binding with me and obtain true eternal life. Jacob swallowed the stone in one gulp. The blood perfume on his body was instantly gone. At that moment, something seemed to have been sucked out of my soul. Although this injury wasn't enough to kill me, the backlash of the destruction contract would slowly devour my life. Even now, I still didn't understand how our connection formed, if it was entirely fake on his end. Perhaps love had somehow disabled my senses. He held the remaining gemstone and dangled it in front of my eyes before swallowing it too. Today I have to thank you properly for getting what I want, baby. Without you, I am not sure I could very fulfilled my dreams. I owe you one. He put on his clothes and looked over at me as I remained in the same spot, blood spilling over onto the sheet. If you make it, that is. He grinned and closed the door behind him. The last thing I remember hearing was Jacob's triumphant laughter echo throughout the castle before everything changed to black. This part has ended. Thank you for listening. If you would like to continue listening to the next part, please let me know by leaving a comment.